Hey guys, Emmy Fisher here again with Navy Nomad, and I am back with another video. Now, I've got a few videos that I've been able to work on over the past couple of days that should hopefully be coming out in a timely manner. This one was not actually meant to come out right away because I'd actually built a really cool, or at least I thought it was really cool, tower base with an aviary on the top. And I built it all by hand, so not using creative mode or anything like that. And I built that over by Viking Bay, and I was pretty happy with it. It's the biggest build that I've done yet. And I came back today after I got home from work to do a video on the completed aviary tower base thingy. And my game had somehow gotten deleted. So I do plan on rebuilding that, probably with creative mode, because there's no way I'm going through the pain of building every single piece of that build. I mean, it was crazy. Because once again, I don't normally do large builds unless I'm really on a roll or something. So you'll see that video probably in the future. The starter base, which is a video that I'll be putting up shortly, had that as the sneak peek at the end of it, or at least the first floor, first part of it. So I've got a couple of the episodes showing some stages of it, but not the one with the completed aviary at the top. So I'm pretty bummed about that, but you'll see those videos coming out. Bear in mind that the final tower aviary product may be slightly different than the sneak peeks that you get in the next couple of videos because I'm having to rebuild it from scratch and from memory. So I will probably end up not doing things quite the same and maybe make some updates or changes, but I'm going to try and make it as accurate as possible to the real thing. Now, I did not go back in and rebuild it today because when something like that happens, I really don't want to go in and rebuild what I just built right away. I'm just like, I'm built out in that sort of respect. So I went and did something completely different. All right. So we are on orbit camera apparently. Okay. We are in the hot springs area, as you can see. The sea is over that ridge over there. This is where that sort of big sandy beaches. On the other side of this range over here is the highlands. The highlands. I was looking for an area that looked kind of like Rohan from Lord of the Rings. If we've got any Lord of the Rings fans out here, while I was at work today, I saw some Lord of the Rings thing on my computer and suddenly got a hankering to build something Lord of the Rings themed. And I wasn't about to tear my hair out trying to build Minas Tirith, but I opted instead to try and build the Golden Hall at Edoras, Meduseld. So, without further ado, here is my attempt. I'm going to go ahead and flap up here. You know what? It might be easier to show this to you. With this thing. Maybe I can fly now. Woo! Alright. So, this is my attempt at Meduseld, the Golden Hall. Alright. If you are a Lord of the Rings fan, you already know all about Rohan and the Rohirrim, but if you're not, alright, okay, so Rohan is mostly a grassland area. I was trying to find somewhere big enough that had a grassland feel to it, and this is kind of what I ended up with. And they are a horse-based people, all right? They are a sort of agrarian society that's all about their cavalry. And so you're going to have a lot of, farms, small villages and towns, no major large cities. The population isn't terribly large. And if you know anything about the Lord of the Rings, it takes place in a Middle-earth that is sort of what's left of a previous golden age. Everything's kind of in ruins and the populations have gone way down and there were like plagues and things. So if you've done your Lord of the Rings research, you know why Lord of the Rings doesn't necessarily look like a civilization at its height. But this would have been on top of an acropolis, if you remember Edoras. Not too many of those that have large enough flat areas on this map, so I just kind of ended up building up here. But this would have been the Golden Hall. Now, the Rohirrim and Rohan architecture is based on, for the most part, Anglo-Saxon architecture. And the Anglo-Saxon period goes from about the mid-5th century all the way up until the Norman Conquest, which I believe was in 1066. So that's sort of the Anglo-Saxon period that we're talking about. Now, most of the architecture that survives from Anglo-Saxon periods are going to be church architecture. Obviously, that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with this build or Lord of the Rings, because they're not going to have, the same religion, etc. But we don't really have any secular examples of architecture because it was built, for the most part, entirely of timber and thatch. All right? It was basically, you had these sort of post-built buildings. What that means is that you take these big timber posts, all right, poles, and you sink them into the ground at certain intervals, and this creates a framework from which you build the walls and then eventually the thatched roofs. Because all of that burns and decomposes and rots, we don't really have much left of that. We have, areas with foundations, and we can see the post holes and kind of try and retro-engineer the building from there, but not really any, actual secular buildings left over from that time period because it was so long ago. There are some areas in the UK and in Europe that have done some amazing recreations of Anglo-Saxon towns and villages, but once again, we're having to use historical sources and then what we've got left over to sort of retro-engineer these buildings. They would have been sort of rectangular in shape, everything from small buildings to some halls that could be upwards of 50 feet long and 25 feet wide. Now, obviously, when we're talking about Lord of the Rings, everything is bigger and bolder. So, the Golden Hall is going to be a little bit more grandiose in that respect. Now, most Anglo-Saxon towns and villages were not built directly on top of previous Roman settlements. They tended to build elsewhere from that, because if you know anything about at least southern England and those areas, the Romans did get into those areas. But they're going to be these towns with these post buildings, timber and thatch, and most of these towns are going to have a main hall, a central area that were sort of used as meetings and meeting areas and ceremony areas and that sort of thing. And inside the buildings, you would have had a central hearth area where you could, roast and cook a lot of food for, the town, the village, etc. A lot of the buildings were also pit buildings in the sense that the actual floor of the building on the inside was several feet below the ground on the outside. They dug down into the ground a few feet, and that really helps with things like insulation and keeping the damp out, keeping the cold out, and things like that. So those we do have evidence of because you can still see, depressions and post holes left from that time period, not necessarily the posts themselves. So this is what it is on the outside. I built a giant sort of platform to build this on. It's literally, it's 12 across by I don't know how many back, and I just built it up by one wall and then put ceilings all over it to create the stair effect because it is supposed to be on top of an acropolis. I'm trying to base it as much as I could on the actual film version, the film Lord of the Rings hall. Obviously restricted, of course, by architecture and availability of design material. But if you recall, you had these stairs going up in the center and these sort of platform areas with torches and flags. Obviously, the pillars and the woodwork would have been carved and gilt, and there had been tapestries and flags showing, their famous legends and about the Rohirrim and lots of things, lots of motifs of horses, obviously, but you can't do that in art. But here is the main sort of central area. I was able to, I used actually, this is not stone, this is brick. I liked that look a little bit better, and my screen isn't rendering in completely properly, but I apologize for that. I've been using catwalks really to create some decor because I can't, like, there would have been the double horse head motif on the top here. Obviously can't do that. This is directly based on the designs and concept drawings I saw for the movie. They had on both sides these three sort of gabled roofs coming out here with the three smaller ones up there. Sometimes there is a thing shown on the top here, sometimes not. I kind of played around with it because obviously this is an arc interpretation. It's not going to be accurate 100%. We've got the back going on here, threw in some of those brick walls in the back. That's where the throne is going to be on the inside. And we've got that sort of sloped roof. Now obviously with sloped roofs on Arc, you can only go in one particular angle, so it wasn't like I could do the top section at a certain angle and then make the bottom two rows shallower like it is in real life, I guess, or in the movie and in most depictions. So I'm having to make do with that. But overall, I'm pretty pleased with how this looks. Sorry, I almost said chuffed there. Don't want to say chuffed. Wrong country. Anyway, so we've got the central, this sort of outer area here. You know what, I haven't figured out how to get out of the sky after I'm done floating. I'm going to have to get on my Pteranodon. Okay, let's park you up here. Yeah, they deleted, my previous game deleted, like, I had 4 Argents that I bred and a bunch of Pteranodons, so I just spawned this one in, which is why I'm riding him without a saddle, because my game got deleted. Alright, so we got our central entrance gate here. Let's open up the hall. Normally the rafters would have been visible and all that sort of stuff, but I had to put ceilings up to create those gables and things up on top. But anyway, we've got more banners and things in here. When I think of colors of the Rohirrim, I think of that forest green, sort of red color and gold, so that's kind of how I tried to do this. And it's called the Golden Hall because not only was there beautiful woodwork and artwork and stuff carved with gilt gold on it, but the roof would have been thatched and would have seemed to shine as if it was gold from a distance, which is taken directly from the books. And so back here we've got storage areas, etc. That's kind of what I've thrown in. And I've designed it based on that scene where I think it's in Return of the King, where they're having a party. I mean, they're honoring the dead and things like that, but they're also throwing a party. So they've got all the tables with the benches out here. You know, hail the victorious dead, that whole scene. Got the gables on the side here. I've got torches all up and down just to make it easier to see in here because there wasn't really a lot of light in the building. There weren't a lot of windows or things like that in Anglo-Saxon architecture, secular architecture, because of insulation purposes. But you would have had this central hearth area. I've used the preserving rack here as that because there's not actually a spit roasting thing that you could put there. But I put a couple of fires on either side. We've got the columns going up the side. Now these would have been carved and decorated and would have been round and just absolutely gorgeous, but this is Arc. And then of course the king, etc., and his throne would have been a few steps up, but you can't really I didn't want to go all the way up one floor because that was going to be too high, and we don't really have half walls for vanilla Arc at this point. I believe they were supposed to be in the S+, but it's something that didn't get switched over to console, so I'm pretty bummed about that. But here's our fancy lumberchair acting as a throne. I've got some more flags and stuff back here. And I've put some beds and stuff over here because, I mean, this is a new game for me, and I don't necessarily want to delete this after I've built it, so I'll probably be using this as an outpost when needed, so it'll be good to have a bed in here to spawn into. I'm playing the game on a very low dinosaur count, so there's hardly anything out here. I think I'm at like 1 out of, I think it's 5 or something. Whatever it is on console, it's pretty low. And I made a video, it's as sort of a joke, where I started a new game with this dino count on 0 just to see what that did, because if you change the dino count while you're actually in a game that you've already saved, it's not really going to affect it much because all those dinosaurs that have already been spawned in previously are going to stay there. It's not unless you start a whole new game and play around with the dino count that it's really going to affect the number of dinos that you see at the beginning of that game. And if you start a new game with a dino count on 0, there is absolutely no living thing anywhere. So I made sort of a funny little video. If you want to go ahead and check that out, that's already up. So feel free to watch that if you want a bit of a joke about what that's like. But anyway, yes, this is the Golden Hall of Edoras, home of the Rohirrim. And as the sun sets on the waterfalls in the back, you can get an idea of what that looks like. But anyway, if you liked this video, please hit that like button. If you're interested in seeing more builds in the future, small builds, tiny builds, historically themed builds, fantasy themed builds, apparently that's something I do now. Please hit the subscribe button for future videos. At this point, I'm trying to get at least one video out a week, although it's going to be summer vacation soon, so hopefully get about 2 videos out a week. So that would be really great. Please help support the channel. And thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.